All right. All right. So we're here. So this isn't so first of all, welcome everybody. If you're watching, if you're tuning in, so welcome. This is really just like J South time, man. Like this is J South's corner, man. This isn't talk that talk. But before we actually get into everything that that we're gonna be discussing or that I'm gonna be discussing more or less, um, I do got to make sure I take care of business and pay some bills. So I don't know if you guys have been watching any of the streams or anything like that we do as it relates to Instagram and stuff like that. But one of the things that I've been trying to make sure that I continuously post up is the fact that when we go on these shows and when we're doing talk that talk and when I'm coming on here live, we have credibility to stand by, right? So like we've all had skin in the game. We've all been in this process for at least 10 years or more, right? We've marched. Rick has marched. Rick has taught. I've marched. I've taught, right? And still teaching to this day. Maya, she has been in the game. She knows she's a musician, plus she's a dancer. So we all have some type of backing to basically say that we have some credibility to stand on to say that we can be able to make these comments, right? So, and the reason why I'm saying that is because if anybody doesn't know, or anybody out there listening doesn't know, I'm a part of the National Association of Music Educators. If you don't know what that is, that's called NAfME. It was MENC before then, Music Education National Convention. So I'm a part of that, and I'm a part of the Texas chapter. And what I am is the chair for diversity. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing, and so I want to make sure that I say this, live on air, so that we can try to reach as many people as possible, because that's where our goal is. We're trying to reach as many music educators as possible. So what we have going on, and we have a fall webinar on Tuesday, September 14th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And so I'm just going to read it specifically from how we have it worded. NAfME Texas is hosting a fall webinar on culturally responsive pedagogy featuring Dr. Constance McKoy, professor of music education at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She is nationally renowned and an expert on this topic, and we are so excited to have her speak for our organization. So you don't have to be a member to attend. This is a completely free webinar that you can come in, that you can attend. What I'm going to do is after we close out today, I'm going to make sure that I leave all of the information in the description box so that you can be able to access all that information that is needed for that webinar. But I just want to make sure that anybody who comes in here, and if you ever come in here, if you ever have questions, if you ever want to ask, well, who are you? Who are these guys? Blah 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 blah. Please understand that we have some credibility behind our name. Please understand that we have skin in the game, and so we know what we're talking about, and the concerns that we have. All right. All right. So let me go ahead and move on. So one of the things, and once again, this isn't talk that talk. This is I'm probably gonna start labeling the J South corner. I'm gonna get my own little thing going up. But one of the things that I was thinking about, and I want to say in this past week, is what's been going on, or the conversations that we were having with Talk That Talk. And one of the things that just kept coming up over and over and over again. And let me put a quick pause on everything. Shout out to all the band programs that had games this past weekend, man. I don't know how many I can name them off. Prairie View, Texas Southern, Miles. I think FAM and Jackson is having a game as we speak. Alabama State had a game. Texas Tech had a game. U of H had a game. Please understand that I don't discriminate. I'm naming everybody, anybody I can think of, whether you black college or whether you're a predominantly white institution. You have a program, and your program is important. We want to make sure that we recognize them. But anyway, moving forward, one of the things that kept popping back up when we were having the conversation on our last show was infrastructure. And that it for me, as I go back and I listen to the shows, and I have to listen to the shows because as I'm listening to the shows, I have to do the edits and things like that. But that infrastructure thing kept popping up over and over and over again. And one of the people who were really adamant on that was my man Quan. And so I wanted to actually be able to sit down and have this conversation about infrastructure. and really talk about infrastructure, especially in urban communities. So let's go ahead and have this conversation. So let's welcome Quan into the room. There we
Good
go.
afternoon,
Yeah,
everybody.
I don't have my claps today. There we go. He clapped for himself.
That's
But
what's up.
oh yeah, there we go. Appreciate it, Quan. Southern versus Troy also. Southern
Yeah.
played. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I just want to jump right into it. There's no point in holding back and halfway talking about it. So go ahead and give me your thoughts as far as where your mindset is when you speak about infrastructure. And just to kind of let you know off top, like when we're gonna have these conversations, these are not things that are written down, or I'm coming straight from the dome. As far as whatever you respond to, I'm probably gonna have a question that follows it based on what you say. So go ahead, give me your thoughts on infrastructure.
Most definitely. Before I do, you were speaking about credibility. So whomever watched this, I do want to add to the fact that I'm entering my 9th year teaching, certified highly qualified teacher now. When I started teaching, I was in ISD, transition to charter schools, public schools, private schools, as a band director, drama teacher, choir teacher, and now, of course, band director. I do have my undergraduate from Prairie View, HBCU, but then my master's in music ed from Adams State University. And then I'm seeking to enter a DMA program as well. So I do want to, add to that. These are credible people that are speaking. It's not just people that, Joe Blow, YouTube University band head, magna cum laude guy, but we are guys that are credible. Uh, Now let's get into it with this infrastructure thing.
There we go. There we go.
All
But
right.
no, I appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, no problem, bro.
We just got to let them know, man. And sometimes we
Yeah.
got to let them know because, like you said, YouTube University is running rampant right now. People
Yeah.
who ain't never stepped foot in band rooms have so much to say, but they don't have nothing to back behind them. So we got to make sure that we put our information out there. So it's all good. You good with me?
Most definitely. So the whole part about in regards of infrastructure that I've been lamenting the last few shows and just as overall for my career is what I've seen. We're just gonna put it out there. There are still remnants of separate but equal that goes on in education all the way across. We could say systemic racism, but in my opinion, it's not more so black and white. Now, don't get it twisted; it still has black and white issues, but it's a more of affluent or affluent to low socioeconomic that makes the difference. When you come to infrastructure, a lot of predominantly ritzy or more affluent neighborhoods, they have the feeder patterns set up. They have the 2 or 3, 4 band directors. When you go to the flip side, that's not the same what's happening at low socioeconomic schools with predominantly black and brown students. The reality of it is your feeder pattern may be on its last leg or on life support. And a lot of the times, those band directors that are there are the only band directors, and they're teaching more than one course content within fine arts. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. But if you go even to the lower level, if you have 10 elementary schools, how many of those elementary schools actually have an adequate music program? Not many of them. So when you talk about from the bottom up to the top to bottom, it all affects. That elementary music aspect affects the middle school affects the high school, and that high school damn sure going to affect the college and collegiate level. And then that's the big circle of, are we then putting out adequate musicians to go back into those communities of those black and brown people in low socioeconomic status to honestly compete with our counterparts that graduate from the PWIs? Because we had a conversation not too long ago in regards of our music departments. Are we building musicians or are we building character? Because the reality is you have to have both of them when you're entering that form of school. So the infrastructure thing is so many facets to it, bro. That's just the tip of the iceberg, honestly.
So let me ask you this question because I know what you mean by this, but I want to make sure that anybody who's listening out there, when we play this back and when I post it up, I want to make sure that people understand exactly what you're talking about. So, what do you mean by when you say an adequate elementary program?
Okay, so there's certain things. So in Texas, we have what's called TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. There's specific TEKS that you need to hit to truly say, okay, this program is growing and is spiraling upward from, okay, they know how to read the treble and bass clef. That's the start. Just say if one of those are the objective. Okay, so that means by the time they get out of fifth grade, they should know how to read basic rhythms. They should honestly understand the basics of the Kadai method. They should have already participated in Orff ensembles, basic choir, understanding, high and low notes, some form of diction, all of those things by the time they get out of the fifth grade, if they would have had an adequate program. We're speaking about from kindergarten to fifth. So that means your fourth and fifth graders should have been in a recorder ensemble. That means they should understand ta ta ti ti. They understand Kerwin hand signs of do re mi and all of those things. By the time they get to fifth grade, most of them should have already understand the instrument family about brass, woodwind, and percussion. And if you want to include keyboard in that as well, by the time they hit in sixth grade, they're already selecting their instruments. So if they're in band, sixth through eighth grade, they learning the basis of their instruments. If you're in Texas, seventh and eighth grade, that program should be participating in some form of concert, sight reading, either festivals or ensembles, where they're competing at the local, regional, and state level. From there, they transition to high school, within where they learn the basic principles of marching, but continuing their growth on their instrument. And then they transition from that high school sector, having the opportunity to earn a scholarship to whatever institution of their choice. That's from the bottom to the top. Now, for most low socioeconomic schools, there's gaps in between. And it's kind of like building a house. So if the foundation is messed up and then you put something on a weak foundation, well, the foundation is going to crumble, but then you put something else on top of that, and it's just going to fall from the top to the bottom. And that's what's going on within these school systems, especially in the black and brown community.
So are you saying that if there are elementary programs,
Mm-hmm.
when elementary music teachers are being selected, that they're not prepared to walk into the classroom as it relates to the urban communities?
Yes and no. Because one thing you have to consider is, first of all, whatever school setting that you're setting, are you culturally aware of who you're teaching? Kind of like, so do you know who your customers are? That's first and foremost. And so then, how are you exposing or introducing these instruments and this music curriculum to these students? How is it?
Let me push back on that for a second, right? Because we have all these parents out here and people out there who are saying, well, kids are kids. You should be able to teach them the way that you teach any kid, right?
Yeah, and they're not teachers. Okay. They're not teachers. And if a teacher says that, in my opinion, in my respectful opinion, I feel like they're not aware of the customer. Like, so I'm a band director at a predominantly black and brown school in Houston. The way that I taught when I was teaching in Stafford is completely different for how I have to teach at Worthing. The bottom line for teaching, when you're introducing something to somebody, first of all, you must tell that student, that child, whatever, this is the purpose. This is my objective of teaching you this, and why. Because if a child doesn't even understand the why, I don't even want to learn it. Mm-hmm. But how can I have whatever this lesson is that you're teaching me relevant to helping me with the future opportunity, whatever that case may be, scholarships or whatever. But you can't go into every classroom the same way. I know for a fact a teacher that's teaching in the Arlington area may not be culturally aware of a student that's being reared in Pasadena, Texas. It's two different cultures, it's two different climates. So you have to introduce that in a different way. So whoever says that about you could teach the child the same way, that's a lot. And they must don't have kids. You have kids, and I know you have one child. You could fuss at them and scare them, and they'd be like, I ain't gonna do it no more. And then you have another child, you're gonna have to give them another form of punishment for them to understand, don't do that no more. Mm-hmm. And then you have the other child that be like, well, they got to learn the hard way. Same lesson, 3 different perspectives.
Okay. So now let me get on this, right? So, like, let's say you do have that elementary kid that didn't get the right music education as they started out as musicians or kids in elementary school. They get to the middle school level, right? They haven't had the proper instruction. What does a middle school program, or what should a middle school program look like?
Middle school program in your 6th grade year, you should be go through your I still do this. I still test my kids for their best instrument. Now, many kids, they may say, well, I want to play trumpet, but hey, your lips is super full. It may not be the best instrument, but let's give it a try. And you go through that testing of testing of instrument process, and whatever instrument they test the best on, you begin grooming them on basic stuff. How to identify, you're a trumpet player, how to identify C from G, how to, breathe properly, going through breathing gyms and whatnot, proper posture to sit. They should be going through all those basics. So by the time they hit 7th and 8th grade, they're already doing region scales. They're already preparing for solo and ensemble. Overall, preparing them to be able to perform independently as well as with an ensemble. How to honestly, that you're a trumpet player, be able to sit in an ensemble and blend and balance with clarity. How to the basics. Understanding terminology and symbols, how to read music, how to understand it, how to interpret it. Introduce them to different styles and genres of music, and then you continue building those blocks from there.
So I'm gonna put this out here. So
Mhm.
I remember when I was teaching in a specific area. I'm not gonna tell the area. Or maybe I will, but I won't. And so when I was out there, I took a middle school position. And one of the things when the principal came to me, what he said was, I want to make sure that I have a marching band. We want a marching band at this middle school. And I looked at him and I said, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not doing that, right? Because we have 6th graders. We're preparing them for how to play the instrument. They can't even sit and play, let alone get up and start moving around and marching and playing, keeping the mouthpiece steady, keeping the embouchure set, especially when you're talking about brass players, woodwind players, blah blah blah, right? And it started to bother me as a music educator, and I'm gonna be honest, it still bothers me now, right? What is your opinion on, because we're talking about infrastructure, right? So what is your opinion on these middle school programs having marching bands?
For me, that's being honest. That's a double-edged sword for me. Coming from Louisiana, there's a particular school, and for all of our listeners that look this school up, I don't know if it's open now due to after Katrina, but prior to, there was a middle school named Albert Bell. Albert Bell has one of the best middle school marching band programs that I've witnessed with my own eyes in my life. Uh, but it worked for them. But I've seen it in different areas where it just doesn't work. I believe at one point, shout out to Tim McAfee. I think he for Alto, Texas. I think he had where the program kind of had like middle schoolers and high schoolers mixed in, and it worked for him. So me personally, it's not my cup of tea because at the end of the day, I'd rather sacrifice those 3 years of 6th, 7th, 8th grade of marching to ensure that that child knows their instrument, so that when they transition to that freshman year, it's nothing to teach them how to march, but it's a whole different pain in the butt when you're teaching a child how to play the instrument. So, in my opinion, for me, I don't want a middle school marching band. However, it works for some, but that is something that I wouldn't develop out of my own.
Yeah, and you kind of brought it up, being from Louisiana. Um, shout out to Louisiana. I got family in Louisiana, so
Mm.
I'm part of the culture, but I ain't part of the New Orleans Baton Rouge culture. My family in Monroe, but
That's
but yeah,
different.
yeah, it's different. It's different. It don't even feel like Louisiana down there. But no, I wonder, when we talk about the two different places, right? When we talk about Louisiana, because when we start looking at Mardi Gras and things like that, you start seeing these middle school marching bands coming out of the woodworks, right?
Mhm.
But then when we start looking at these Texas programs and talking about Texas structure specifically, right?
Mhm.
We start wondering, like, is this efficient? Is this going to work? So like you brought up Alto, and I've seen this before where you have eighth graders who participate in high school programs, and in most cases I've seen it as an incentive, to throw them a bone to keep practicing and things like that. But then I've seen a lot of places where this is strictly middle school marching band.
Mhm.
And sometimes, and I don't know how this works, because I knew for me, I couldn't stand it as the teacher or the educator, because I knew I still had flutes to work on. I knew I still had clarinets to work on. I knew that I still had saxophones to work on, and I'm just naming some woodwinds, but I'm just saying there's different, structures when it comes to embouchure placement and how getting a great sound out of these kids, that I think that we spend more time with the marching band aspect that we miss out on from that instruction, right? So I don't know. I think that I believe that sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot, and I think it goes back to exactly what you were saying. You got to know your area. You
Mhm.
know, I don't believe that, and this is my personal opinion. I don't think that you need a marching band in middle school. I think that everything is a graduating situation. Like
Mhm.
I can't, and this has nothing to do with music, but it still for me fits. I don't understand why we have these graduation ceremonies in middle school. Don't graduate from middle school. You promote yourself from the third grade, or excuse me, from the eighth grade to the ninth grade. Graduation and it should be synonymous to high school and college, right? But I think that we give these things out too early, and then we try to figure out, well, why this kid doesn't know this specific thing. Well, because you spent your whole middle school year cranking it up down the street. So what's your thoughts on that?
So there's a difference between education. That there's a war between education and entertainment. And honestly, you can see that from the bottom up and top down. How many times, like, so for example, like we like to compare respectfully the DCI world with the HBCU world, right? So with the HBCU show yesterday at Labor Day Classic, Prairie View and TSU, they did their first field shows.
Mhm.
In about 2 weeks, they're going to have to switch that field show, right? Now, I'm pretty sure as both of those directors, they saw things that needed to be fixed. They saw, elements where it's like, well, we could have did better on this. But due to the aspect of entertainment, they're going to have to adjust their show. Especially we were speaking about preview before Cotton Bowl, and then before Texas Southern plays, I think Southern in Arlington. Like they're going to have to switch their show up for the sake of the entertainment aspect. But from an aspect of education, did they fix the problems? And will their students be aware of whatever those problems were or discrepancies were? Possibly not. It goes back to the fact of middle school and the high school aspect pending your administrator. Many times we are forced to entertain because we're looked at, I mean, just bottom line, we looked at as magicians, not musicians,
Mm.
because we want to ensure that you master this particular craft. They're looking at it as, but I just want to be entertained. And that's one of the issues that we have from elementary to high school. I want to be entertained. Outside of um the drumline aspect with Nick Cannon's bad attitude, that was the synopsis of the movie with Dr. Lee's issue with the president. He wanted to be entertained. Dr. Lee's point was, but I'm here to educate.
Mhm.
And we're still facing that same issue to this day of entertainment over education. So when
But
that principal's go ahead.
no, you got it. You got it. You got it.
So when that principal walks in that room and says, I want a marching band, you're in a hard, between a rock and a hard place because as the master of this craft that say that ain't gonna work. Because y'all focusing on the look. And even though they sound like Boo Boo Kitty, my professionalism integrity is with this student because it's a window of opportunity that we can lose them.
Mhm.
And so I can't afford that. So I need to divulge and invest all of this education into them so that if he, transfers to the next school and a trumpet player, and they say, well, where did you learn it from? Well, my band director was, was Mr. Luke. Well, Mr. Luke ain't taught you
I
that.
learned, can you feel it? I can play Can You Feel It for you.
You know what I'm saying? That's what we face, bro. That's what we face.
But see, but that to me goes back to the infrastructure thing, right? Because
Right.
how many times do you see that in non-urban communities?
Mm-hmm.
How many times, especially in the state of Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the non-urban communities, you're not going to see it, right? These kids are getting prepared for all region. These kids are getting prepared for concert and sight reading. That's what they're doing. They're learning the craft of the instrument, right? And it kind of goes back to exactly what we've talked about before. The places sometimes, and this is no shot to anybody's university or whatever, but sometimes when it's all you know, and education programs are not preparing us to leave the classroom to deal with a lot of these situations that we end up being in, right? Because like I know, when you graduate, most of the time you're graduating thinking you're going to get the 5A, 6A school with all these great kids and a high school program, and you thinking, yo, I'm ready to go ahead and get this thing done. Let's go ahead and that doesn't happen for whatever reason, whether the high school you apply to already has a head band director, and we can talk about that, the hiring process, that it's all garbage to me. But
Yeah.
my point is, but then you end up getting this middle school smack dab in the hood, and then they throw you in there, and all you know is the knowledge that you're ready to go ahead and get these kids to crank up. And then all of a sudden you start trying to teach that way. You're trying to teach the middle school kids like you wanted to teach the high school kids. And then these middle school kids they get promoted because they don't graduate. These middle school kids get promoted to their high school programs, and then they're not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But then what makes it even harder, and this is my personal opinion, because we're going to talk about this in a second. What makes it even harder is it makes the high school band director's job harder.
Mm-hmm.
They have to work harder. They have to grow more gray hairs because they got to look back at that middle school and say, well, your band director ain't teach you nothing.
And that's why I personally feel like the middle school structure is the most important piece of it all, because if you're privileged to have an adequate elementary program, you've already been given the importance of music notation, the reading, and different things. You should have. Middle school, I'm building from that foundation. If you have a sorry middle school teacher, I'm feeding those people in the world. That's why I say the middle school and then the college spectrum is so critical, because the colleges are giving those teachers into the world. Those middle school teachers and directors are giving them to the high school, like you say, are giving gray hairs to the high school directors. And then those collegiate professors and whatnot are giving, quote unquote, educators now this false sense of understanding of what education is when you go back to those low SEL communities. Mm-hmm. So it works hand in hand. And the problem is people are not prepared to get out. And like you say, they think they're going to get out and crank, but you don't even know how to, you're a percussionist, but you don't even know how to set the embouchure, the correct embouchure for a brass player. And so now what you're trying to do is have an after school drum line with 16 snares and a big drum line, but they don't know how to read and can't identify the rudiments, but they know how to play a backwards paradiddle and know how to grit it. So that makes you cold, right?
They know how to, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I've been in a situation like they know how to play it, but they can't read it.
At all.
I've been in that situation before too.
At all.
Where I had these middle school kids, they can play the hell out of a paradiddle, and I put it in front of them and I said, "All right, read it. What's this, bruh?
What you just played."
So
yeah.
So, all right. So let's look at this infrastructure, right? This structure. So we have an elementary program that probably didn't teach what they were supposed to teach, right? Because we didn't have an adequate elementary school program. Then we get to the middle school where we may have a principal who says, hey, I want a marching band on the field. right? And not all principals are going to do that. So let me make sure I put that out there. But we're just using this for the sake of the argument, right? Or maybe you have a principal that didn't do that, and we just have an inadequate teacher, right? Because I have seen that before too, where you got a teacher that's in the program, but they're depressed at the fact that they're there because they didn't want to be there in the first place, and they are not prepared to teach these kids. So now these 6th, 7th, 8th graders are now, once again, regardless of whatever the situation is, not prepared to go to the high school. So now the question becomes, what should the high school program look like? Now, before you say anything, I want to put this caveat out there. I'm going to make sure I post this on Facebook. I don't care what anybody says to me or however you feel. You should not be teaching beginning band in high school. I'm saying that straight out. This is my personal opinion. I am entitled to my opinion. You should not be teaching beginning band in high school. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. And in the state of Texas, let me say that. In the state of Texas, because the requirements for the state of Texas are so high. In the state of Texas, you are required in most cases, in most districts, to go to UIL. And if that's the case, if you're teaching a beginning band student, that means that either A, you're not going to have those beginning band students either on the field or whatever, or you have to put them in the lineup and pray you got enough kids to be able to cover those kids up.
So I see the validity in your conversation, but I'm gonna give you two real life testimonies of why I respectfully disagree. Number one is I didn't join the band until my sophomore year in high school.
Okay.
Like I say, Mr. Kelvin Berry gave me my first pair of sticks sophomore year in high school. I transitioned to another high school, and that's how I joined the band. And around like 04, by 05, I knew I wanted to be a band director. 06 graduated and went on to become what I am doing now. There's a young man that I taught at my high school that just left. His name is Jalen Swift. He's actually a trombone player at Langston right now. He didn't join the band until his sophomore year, but it was his work ethic and me willing to sacrifice, honestly. I know what you're about to say. I know what you're about to say. We shouldn't have to.
No. That's not what I'm going to say. That's not what I'm going to say at all. Actually, what I'm going to say is, bro, you from Louisiana though. So the work ethic for a person to be in band is completely different because their view of what they see is different, right? You said it before, culture there when it comes to band is different. And then talking about your student, I'm going to keep it 100. Like, those are diamond in the rough situations.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to be that scavenger, which is not fair. It's not fair.
And that's what I was going to get to.
Yeah. But if you're not willing to do that, honestly, you possibly won't have a band. Not in due to the lack of infrastructure.
That's like, yes, because in the urban community, why do we have to do that in the urban communities, right? I think that's my biggest problem, right? Some of us, and I'm not speaking for everybody, right? I'm going to speak to the people that I know, right? Like, I have a good friend of mine who was a head band director and gave his life to teaching kids in urban populated communities, man, and lost his wife and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, why do we have to do that? Why do we have to go through these trenches and dang near kill ourselves for a profession that we love so much? We love to do it, but we shouldn't have to kill ourselves to do it. We shouldn't have to put ourselves in the hospital or lose families. Like, I know so many band directors that have not been married based on the fact that they have to work so extenuously just for the program to keep kids. And I know people who are in affluent areas who don't have that problem, who've never had that problem, who walk into the affluent area and they got these kids and they're ready to go, and they got good feeder programs and they're ready to go, and they go there and all they got to do is sit back and do their job, just teach.
To add to that, when I student taught in Fort Bend ISD. I won't mention a particular school name, but it was of a affluent neighborhood. On staff, I'm not playing, they had 9 people. Now, they had 4 band directors 4 directors that was paid through Fort Bend ISD. The remaining workers were clinicians whose students or whose students were their children, and then they volunteered. But it was a trumpet player that played for the Bluecoats. That was his dad. Percussion guy, he was center snare for Oklahoma State. His mother was the middle marimba player for Oklahoma State too, and she taught front ensemble. Like, and also they could afford private lessons, so they were paying. I believe it was Rice University and students from University of Houston to come in and clinician them once or twice a week. So when I went that a student taught, and I was like, okay, it's band camp. We about to be outside grinding. We sat in his office more and just talked for 2 weeks because the students went to camp and they ran the program. He didn't have to do nothing. So I get what you're saying, but then the bottom line for us is if we don't do it, and this is just truly unfortunate, our kids are going to suffer from it, and because they already are years and light years behind the affluent neighborhoods. And
see, go ahead.
And I was about to say we can get into it kind of later, but the introduction of magnet programs and STEM and all of that just neglects fine arts, because I can get down with STEAM because STEAM adds that art aspect.
Yeah.
But when you talk about STEM and CTI and you just dismiss fine arts, that's why we lose.
But and I want to make sure I put it out there. I don't have a problem with, programs that are not in affluent or urban areas. So those more affluent areas, I think you guys are doing a great job. I think you guys have a very great system. I think my problem is the systems that we have in place, in my personal opinion, are just not conducive. It's not working. We are continually pushing ourselves and hurting ourselves and forcing ourselves to continue on to this. And sometimes we look at the end product and don't get me wrong. If you do this, if you're out there, you're a director and you do this, I am not, saying that this is something wrong that you shouldn't do or whatever. But when we get to the end product, after we done broke our backs and killed ourselves and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden we get the kids on the field and then we put our chest out and we say, man, I love what I do. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like looking at the positive side of things, man. I really do. But I've also watched a lot of great band directors who didn't have to go through all that struggle and strife to be able to put a product on the field. And I just don't believe that we as a people and as a culture should have to go through that struggle and strife. I don't think that it's right. I don't believe that it's right for us to do that. Why is it that when we do that, when we struggle, when we go through the trenches, we say, oh, it's cultural? I don't agree with that. I don't think that needs to be something that's cultural. I think that needs to be something that needs to be addressed, and we find a better way to do it. I agree with you, Quan. I don't like the fact that in a lot of cases we have to beg to try to find more staff members. Beg. Mm-hmm. Whereas I don't see that. I don't believe that is happening in other places. I just don't believe that. Yeah. We have band directors who have one director, and like you said earlier, one director, and that one director is teaching choir, dance, band, and everything else under the sun. That ain't right.
That ain't right.
It ain't right, bro. And then we look at it, and then we sit up here and we say to ourselves, well, we don't say that. Because let's go back to the infrastructure. The administrators are looking at it and say, well, they got a product on the field and the program's still running, so we good. So we not gonna pay nobody, or we not gonna bring nobody else in there. We cannot just settle. And I feel like we're just settling for these things. We're literally looking at the situation and we say, well, my boy over there is going through some of the same problems, so this is just normal in the culture. No, it's not normal. We can't accept that. I believe that every district needs to have some private lesson teachers on staff. Yes. In the urban communities, a lot of these kids can't afford it, but we can figure it out. We can figure out how to put kids on the field. We can figure out how we can get reads in these kids' hands when these kids don't have reads. We can figure out how to put mouthpieces in these kids' hands when they don't have mouthpieces, but we can't figure out how we can make it happen to where these kids have a private lesson on staff in the district. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, but that also boils down to, is that district centralized or non-centralized? And for those who are not aware, a centralized district is a district that basically that campus is sovereign amongst itself. So all of the money that that school will accumulate according to their enrollment, that administrator, that head principal, is judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to the funds and for how he wants it to be spent. And and those low socioeconomic areas, many of the times they feel like, hey, your band is only 40 people. I'm not going to invest into a band of 40 people when I have 1,400 kids who may need books, who may need to, which is wrong, because you're looking at it like, hey, I've invested into this degree. You've given me a task to do it. I don't even have all my tools. You want me to eat this steak that you cook well done without a knife and a fork. Go on, get to gnawing, brother. And literally, that's sometimes the attitude of things that we face. I mean, so that centralized, non-centralized, that whole conversation. But like I said earlier, it's low-key still like separate but equal.
How much input do you believe that a fine arts director should have on programs?
And give me an example.
So, like, I know that there are situations where the fine arts director is very, very, very adamant on making sure that programs have what they need. In most cases, those are in the more affluent areas. But then I know areas where the fine arts director only focuses on the products that are, I guess you want to say, thriving. And then there are programs or areas where the fine arts director is like, well, I can suggest these things, but I am not going to, I guess you want to say, go to bat. Well, not go to bat, but I am not going to try and put these policies in place. But I can suggest and recommend, but I'm not going to try to put these policies in place. So, what do you believe? The fine arts director, um, the fine arts director should have, or what? How much control do you think they should have?
I think, first and foremost, I think the fine arts director should be there to assist in whatever vision that director has according to the standards that that district is making. And to kind of add what you were saying, this is example. If you have a fine arts director that's biased on style of marching or type of ensembles that you should have, I think overall that's the wrong person for the job. Because, for example, at a predominantly black school, you can't tell them, "Hey, I really want y'all to start a mariachi band."
Well, let me give you some pushback on that.
Mhm.
What if the community wants it?
So if the community wants it, meaning the kids want it, that's a
No.
whole different.
Well, yeah. I let me put it in a different way.
All right.
Let me put it in a different way. When I talk about community, I'm saying you're in a predominantly urban community,
Mm-hmm.
and the percentage of your band program is maybe African American or
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic or both, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the community wants core style,
Mm-hmm.
not the students specifically, but the community, the outside community, the alumni, or those folks. I'm just spitballing it here, but I'm just asking.
I mean, I still don't, but I understand that weight and pressure of what you're gonna have. Um, prime example, like we could speak about alumni relations with the college level. Is that's basically the same thing. So there's a middle ground that you can have, but also that director have to ask himself, if I'm the only person that's here and that's teaching, and I don't know that particular style, and I don't have time to really perfect that, I'm going to be, and maybe that's just me, that rebellious alpha mentality of I'm not going to do it if I don't know it, and I'm not going to do it if I can't do it to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to that, nah, I'm not going to do it. However, there should be a happy median that you can meet with that community, because they are stakeholders that are important as well. But they're not going to have that much pressure on me to where I just change my whole identity.
So getting back to the fine arts director thing, you were kind of basically saying that if they have that mindset, then they're not a good fine arts director. Um, so then the question becomes, are you saying that the fine arts director should be versatile in his thought process?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like, the whole purpose of an ensemble and the music that you're playing should be culturally relevant to that particular group that is playing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's specifically middle school, high school.
Mm-hmm.
When because you and I know when a child has a connection with the song, they're gonna practice it more. When a child understands what they're playing, they're gonna have a better sense of ownership with whatever song or ensemble that they're participating in.
Mm-hmm.
But when they have no connection with it, bro, it's I'm doing it just to do it. And so you can't say, well, we're going to play uh contempo, but we're not gonna play Lil Jon. You the whole purpose of these ensembles is to expose them to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then that goes back into a conversation of of uh of the whole aspect of music literacy and what people put on a pedestal and what people don't, which is a different a different topic in itself, bro.
And I'm you said that, and I was gonna try to pass by it, but I got to bring it back because you said that. So real quick, if you're watching, man, and you have if you wanna comment, or if you want to get on and say your opinion or say your thoughts, I pinned the live right at the top of the chat. So if you said, it says if you want to go live, click the link, blah blah blah. So if you want to get in on the topic, or want to add your opinion, you're perfectly fine. Or if you just want to continue in the chat, that's perfectly fine as well. Um, so what I did want to say is this: you were talking about, well, when we were talking about fine arts directors and having a fine arts director that was specific to one type of, marching or whatever, right?
Mhm.
But here's the problem. Here's the biggest problem. I want you to go with me on this, right?
Gotcha.
Anybody watching, I want you to go with me on this.
Mhm.
And we've had this conversation on Talk That Talk. I'm a kid who graduated from an HBCU.
Mhm.
Never done core style a day in my life. All I know is traditional style, show style marching, right?
Mhm.
I go out in the job market. High schools, because think about it. We got to remember the percentages of high schools in urban areas that actually do traditional and or show style marching is not high, especially in the state of Texas. We always try to make it seem like, and I don't want to. I'm not throwing no slugs and no shots, but we always try to make it seem like we always have availabilities out there, bro. We don't have availabilities out there like we think we do. It's not a whole bunch of percentages of traditional show style marching. So we graduate
Mhm.
and we're looking for that job. That job is not available for whatever reason. There may be positions that are already filled. Teachers didn't leave, whatever. But we also know that there are a plethora of core style schools out there. We know that. So the question becomes, if I apply for that position, one, will I even get that position? Knowing where I graduated from, knowing that I am incapable of teaching that style, because let's go back to the fine arts director again. The fine arts director is going to look at where you came from. And the fine arts director is either, if they're unaware of it, then they're either A, going to search it or say, I'm good. I'm going to pass up
Mm-hmm.
on this guy or girl, right? So then the question now becomes, and this goes right back to the same original question that we asked on the show. Are we truly preparing our kids or our students who are graduating for the job market, right? Now, let me put this caveat in there. Rick made it, or no, Mario made the thought or the statement that why do we, or I think it was Rick, it may have been one of them. Why do we have to conform? They're not teaching their kids that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. But the same thing I said on there, I'm going to say on here. They're not teaching their kids that because they know that the percentage of them receiving one of those gigs is a lot higher than what ours is. They know they don't have to worry about going to that random school in the hood because, one, they have a community of people who graduated, whether it was from UNT, SFA, University of Houston, where a conglomerate of them are in certain schools. And so as soon as they graduate from there, oh, they remember I marched with that guy, or I went and student taught with that guy, or we graduated from the same place. So I'm going to be good. I'm going to be straight. And even if I walk into that position, I'm comfortable enough to be in there. I'm comfortable enough to be in that space. But that doesn't happen with us. So the question now becomes, should we be more versatile in our education so that we can be versatile to the job market?
So I'm a ruffle feathers with this, but it just have to be said. As long as I've been alive as a black man, we've been the ones who've had to adapt in every situation that we've been in.
That's true.
And as a people, that's the same thing. If you ever ask a black person or a person of color what code switching is, I mean, all you have to really do is have a person answer the phone that thinks is a bill collector on the other end. And they'll give you the prime example of what code switching is.
Hello.
Exactly.
Hi.
Exactly. I mean, and even though, that's comical, we do that. We do that every day in the professional world. Because going into a situation that I feel like, well, I'm going to have the buy-in factor from the community administrators. I have everything that I need. But when I put, first of all, that I graduated from an HBCU, let's be clear, many of these fine arts directors who graduated from these predominantly white institutions literally already have a sense of, do they know what they're talking about?
Yeah.
And I've had interviews where they question your music acumen, not from the perspective for the job, but from the perspective of, do you really even know what you're doing?
Yeah.
So I've experienced where I'm being interviewed and my resume is on this person's hand, but I look at them reading another person's resume from a predominantly white institution because they already know, like, we don't even want this guy anyway.
Yeah,
This is kind of like,
we just brought him in just to give him, we just want to give him a chance or whatever. We want to pad the books and saying that we at least did the interview.
exactly. So those particular things happen regardless. Now, if you're graduating, and this is just facts, if you're graduating from a historical black college, it is in your best interest that you know how to do both. It is in your best interest that you understand core style. It is in your best interest that you understand traditional. Now, let me say this real quick. If you're going to develop a traditional school, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have to build it from the ground up.
But that's you've said that on so many occasions, and I'm not saying you're wrong. So let me make sure I put that out there. I'm not saying you're wrong. but I do have a problem with that.
Mhm.
And the reason why I have a problem with that, it goes right back to the same thing that I said earlier. We have to kill ourselves in order to do a job that shouldn't feel like a job, if that makes sense. We have to kill ourselves to do something that we developed a love for and a passion for, and I don't think that's right, man. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that as a people we should do that. I don't think any human being should do that. If you have a passion for it, it's different. And this is no slight to anybody who works at McDonald's, whoever worked at McDonald's, blah 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 blah. Because there are some people who enjoy flipping burgers, and they think that that is if you want to go into the culinary arts or whatever, that's something amazing for you, right? But for a lot of people, working at McDonald's is just a job. I go because I need the bread, right?
Mhm.
I don't think that as people who spent years getting a certificate or getting certified and degreed in something that you really care about should kill yourself trying to develop something. Like I don't really agree with that thought process and that mindset. Am I saying you're wrong? No, I'm not
No.
saying you're wrong at all. But what I am saying is I don't know. In my brain, I don't process that and compute that very well. And the reason why I don't is because I think that we deserve better as a people, as human beings, as a culture. I think that we all deserve better. So that's just my personal opinion.
I mean, but what you're saying is absolutely right. But unfortunately, that is our reality because the infrastructure is not, is out of whack from elementary to high school to college, but even from the aspect of the school board. Like, unfortunately, banned in black neighborhoods now, we're speaking about right now, we're talking about post No Child Left Behind Act, all of those aspects. Fine arts is looked at as they're not being tested. It doesn't matter. And so as an administrator, unfortunately, they have to make the decision. Am I focusing on to ensuring that my school doesn't enter IR, or I'm gonna focus on this music program? Yeah, I want a music program, but at the cost of what? Not at the cost of me being a C plus school, not at the cost of dropping my scores down, because that's what it's about. So on the back end, like you said, you're a part of NAfME and whatnot. The MENC was created so that honestly, that music could be created equal.
True. True. I don't
I mean,
agree with that.
yeah. So I mean, from all of those things, bro, to now, like that's the issue that we've been dealing with. So unfortunately, after that I work, and for those who don't know, my dog Julian is an awesome instructor, and has experience with drum and bugle corps, and he pulled me on, and I did it for a year and a half with him. My thing is this: after I was able to put that on my resume, just a year and a half of being a tech, oh, my phone was ringing because they have a sense of communal fraternalism within themselves, where it's like, okay, well, you understand what it is. Come, you can sit at my table, and that's the only way you're going to make a decent living in music education, and be able to code switch and be able to build your resume, so that you can eventually get to an affluent area where you have a mixed diverse of student population, that you could kind of blend in traditional style to introduce them to all schools and all marching aspects. That's the only way you're gonna get it. But if you just have traditional, unfortunately, my brother, you're gonna have to build.
And so I want to say two things. The first thing I want to say is a person like me, I've always been curious of the things that were different, right? So like I came from Willow Ridge and in Houston, Texas, or back when I said it was Mo City, but I know nowadays they like, man, Willow Ridge is part of Houston now. But I came from Willow Ridge in Houston, Texas, and my partners, they were all going to Southern, they were going to Jackson and blah 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 blah. I saw Norfolk and I wanted something different. That's how I've always operated. I've never been a person who was like, I want to do the same things that everybody else was doing. So I made the decision to go to Norfolk. When I went to Norfolk, and don't get me wrong, I did core style in high school, but I didn't know where it really came from until Mr. Thornton took us to a DCI show my senior year. So I made it 4 years before I even saw a DCI show. And when I got to Norfolk, I met Rick, and when I met Rick, he was doing DCI, and I knew some folks around me who knew what DCI was. So when I saw it, and when I really started getting into it, I said, "Yo, this is pretty dope. I'm interested in this." But I was already at age out year when I really figured out how to become a part of it. So being able to get into that culture and be able to be a part of that is fun for me. I miss, and I haven't texted since 2018, 2019, no, 2017, 2018, 2019. I haven't texted since 2019, being a caption head. So I went from that point to not teching. I miss it because it is definitely a life and an experience that it's hard to let go of. I'm not going to sit up here and say that. But to get back to my point is you're absolutely right. Being a part of those spaces changed everything for me. It changed the different type of interviews that I was getting. It changed a lot of things. And so the one point that I want to kind of make is I think that when we get into our little, and I don't want to call it soapbox, but when we get into our little thing in our little area where we say this is what we do and this is our thing, I appreciate that. I really do. But now getting back to the infrastructure side, are we really, when it comes to that, are we really in the spaces that are going to create and help to create change? Are we in the spaces that are going to help our people get more jobs? Because if the answer to that is no, then we've got to decide to look else, or not necessarily look elsewhere, but do something different. We've got to make the decision to say, okay, I know this is our thing, but what can I do to step outside of our thing to bring more people back in? And I think that's where my brain is. Like I have a problem sometimes, and everybody's not gonna like the same thing. Please don't get me wrong. I don't think everybody's gonna like the same thing. But I do have a problem with the fact that we have so many directors out there who come from historically black colleges and universities who refuse to even indulge in core style marching, even look at it, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I have to say this. When I was coming up, and even since I've been teaching, there are those teachers out there who are not in urban communities who say, don't look at that HBCU style marching. I will never in God do that. I get that. I understand it, blah, 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 blah. But I'm just going to put it out there. Unfortunately, these are the people who hold the key to where we want to be. So you got to play the game in order to get where we want to be. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in culture and our code and all that kind of stuff that we get to this mindset to where we're like, well, people outside of us can't help us with what we need. I'm sorry, I just disagree with that, because sometimes we have these moments where we take what is supposed to be ours and we say, all right, we're not going to step outside of us, we're going to keep this with us. But we put us in the closet and we don't handle the situations for real. We just keep going with the stuff that's not good, and we keep pushing these like, I just don't agree with the fact that this is just the culture. I don't agree with that. Like I said, I get what you're saying. Whereas if you want to make change, you're gonna have to work for it. I get that, but I just don't agree with the fact that, well, you know, it's just the culture. That's just how it is. When we get inside our spaces, then we can only get this particular situation. I think it's time out for that. I think that we need to be able to speak up and say what our issues are, put them out on the table, and not accept it.
So I agree with everything that you're saying, but the main point of what you're saying right now in your synopsis is this: we don't have enough master degree, in my opinion, individuals that are willing to go to these districts, affluent or not, to create the change that's fair and equitable to everybody. You want to march core? March core. You want to do traditional? March traditional. But like I said before, a good sound is a good sound.
I agree.
If you're marching 8 to 5, you need to hit that line on 8. If that squad, I mean, and we need to invest in that and do that. The problem that we're having is this. So on one hand, the people that quote unquote hold the keys are looking at these programs like, okay, so you want us to do that, but you're not even doing that good. First of all, number two, looking at your numbers and data, because everything is about data-driven instructions.
Data. Everything is data.
How many students are graduating from your program and going to that culture that you said that you're emphasizing prepared?
But that
Then,
goes back to your infrastructure. But go ahead.
yeah. So then after that, you're gonna say, okay, so how many of students that's within your culture are participating in region band, state band? So it's kind of like we complain, but then the people that are saying that have the authority to change it, we're not bringing them enough. It's kind of like we got to put more meat on the bread, bro. To truly like you can't be that director say I don't believe in UIL and I don't, but then you never went, and then when you go, you made a fool. So really, it makes it look like you hating on the process instead of going, mastering the process and saying, well, look, I did it because, like I keep saying, Prof. Thornton did it.
But here's the thing, though, and
Right.
I'm gonna keep it 100 because I marched him, man.
Right.
He did it, but he also did it in a different time.
He did.
You know, and I'm not saying it's impossible to be done because there are programs out there who are doing it. And I'm not going to say that they're not doing it. Shout out to Townview. Townview is doing it, right? I've seen them do it. So I'm not going to say that it's impossible to do, but what I am going to say is we are marching, or we are doing this in a different time. When Mrs. Thornton did it, man, the kids were different.
Right.
We were different. We were different. Right. It wasn't my mind is focused on this cell phone or trying to get the latest TikTok video. It was, you gonna do it because I am the band director and this is what my expectation is. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm not gonna argue with you. But the mindsets are different.
Right. So this is the epiphany that I had this week as a director. My mindset is, hey, as a band, this concert F doesn't sound good. We're going to keep playing this concert F. Mm-hmm. And if we got to play it for an hour, once, I use tonal energy tuner, put it on the screen. If you don't make this smiley face, we're not going on to the next thing. But if I keep that mindset, I'll end up losing.
Yeah.
So I have to use a different approach of teaching to ensure that we do tune properly and that intonation is important. But what can I teach to keep these kids' attention, to keep them in the seat? I agree that kids are different, but one thing that I must say is the problem is still the same. So we can't keep complaining about UIL and all of those different aspects if we're not even trying to go. Just say you don't want to go to UIL marching. We'll try a UIL concert. Because I know his first name is Darwin. I forgot his last name, but he teaches at Marshall High School in Houston.
What are you talking about? Any from Texas Southern?
Yeah, TSU. And he was, I believe, the assistant at Sunset at one point as well.
Yeah.
But outstanding program. Look at what he's done at Marshall High School in 2 years.
I agree.
So
100%.
So things are doable, but the question is, are we honestly being able to come with a true plan to say, okay, I'm gonna build this program on these standards, but my approach is gonna be like this, so that I keep the kids in a program, that I ensure that the community is satisfied, and then from a professional aspect, I'm meeting all the standards of my TEKS, UIL, and so forth and so on.
And I don't disagree with you on that. I want to it's just something that just popped in my head, and I could be completely wrong on this, but it randomly popped in my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, like you said, we have to reinvent how we present the information, basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? You what just popped in my head is I think younger people should be teaching at the high school level in our communities. And the reason why I say that is, and I'm not saying that should be across the board, but I'm saying younger people who graduate because they're more connected to the, and I would say they were more connected to, the world as it is now. Whereas, we come out, well, I'm not going to say we, but people in my age group, and you ain't too far off from me, but people in my age group, we are still trying to, in most cases, not me specifically, but trying to teach the way we were taught.
Mm-hmm.
And we're losing more kids than gaining more kids. And I think that you're absolutely right. We have to change how we are approaching these kids. We have to change how we are teaching these lessons. We have to, because these kids' minds are like that. If you can't, if they're not interested in the first like 5 seconds, it's tight. And to try to keep them there is a struggle. And I think that you're absolutely right. We've got to change how we do it. Now, what I also will say is this: there are certain situations where there were already standards in place. And
Mm-hmm.
this is not to, down talk anybody or anything like that. But there are already certain situations where certain standards were in place. So let's say we take uh I don't know. I don't want to use, I'm just going to use Townview as an example. I'm not saying this is happening, but I'll just use them as an example, right? So for Townview, they've had a standard for years. The same standard was there. It didn't change because they had the same director for so many years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's just say Carlisa Washington didn't get that, um wasn't the director, and they brought somebody completely different in there, right? So one of two things could happen. If they brought someone completely different in there, if that person kept the same standard, the I just believe, and I could be wrong because I feel like I'm slightly wrong in this, but this is just something I'm spitballing. If that person kept the same standard, the percentage of loss would not be as high, right? But if they came in there and they did something completely different, the loss would be greater,
Correct.
right? Now, then you have the caveat to that situation. The situation where the band was poor from for a long time. The prior band director wasn't good, and then a new band director comes in, and the kids are just happy to get something different.
Mm-hmm.
So then, yes, population might grow. Now you need a competent director in there to take those interested kids and take them to the next level. So, and I say all that to say, I think a lot of situations are different when you start talking about, um, how people are taking programs and they're being successful with them and blah 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 blah. I think that in a lot of those cases, some of those are apples, not necessarily apples to apples. So that's just my personal opinion on that.
But I would say this though, whatever program that you're a part of, those students buy into your vision, and it
True.
is up to the director to make that vision plain and clear. I've been at this particular school for 3 years. One of the band creeds before we start practice and after we end practice, we always say, "The person thinks, so he or she shall become." So I'm gonna think great thoughts. I'm gonna do great things. I'm gonna accomplish everything I set my mind to. I am greatness, and greatness is in me. I'm a world changer. First of all, because this band program is bigger than just the notes on the paper. It's about you and your character. Then I'm developing musician standards, all of those things. And over the years, my kids have learned that and applied that same band creed in every aspect of their lives. At least I push them to do so.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, those students are so moldable. I don't care what age, what socioeconomic in status that they may have, whatever. They're merely buying into what you're selling. Many of these programs don't are not successful is because the band director, he may not be competent, he may not be consistent, and he may not care. So those three C's determines a lot. Is he competent? Is he consistent, and does he care? Because I have some students that that's in the hood that if I told them, hey, I need you to do this, they like, all right, Mr. Mitchell, we're gonna get it done by any means necessary. But I'm consistent. And honestly, it's sometimes it may be something that I really don't know that I'll be like, you know what? Let me find that out for you.
Yeah.
I mean, so those are the things, but it goes back to infrastructure. Why would a band director have to come into a situation such as myself, where you're the seventh band director in 4 years,
Hmm.
and I'm the first band director that's highly qualified since about 2014, 15, and it's 2021. Like those are the things that's the problem. And it goes back to infrastructure. It goes back to that district. It goes back to the emphasis on, do you really want a program?
Mm-hmm.
So
So, once again, if you're listening, if you're watching, um, I have the link pinned up. If you want to get in, if you want to leave your comments or your thoughts, just put your 10 cents or 2 cents or 25 cents, however many cents you got. Just go ahead and click the link at the top. It literally says if you want to go live, click the link. But you just got to make sure that your camera is on. I don't care where you're at. If you're driving, it is what it is. I know that, it's a Sunday. We had church today. So, we had to go get the Lord in us first before, we came on here. So I do get it. Um, Let me ask you this question. So we talked about infrastructure. We talked about elementary. We talked about middle school, high school, and even a little bit of college, right? What do you think that it's going to take for us to get it together? Like, give me just 3 things that you believe need to happen in order for us to get it together
get it together as the culture for our high schools, middle schools, or just music
across the board.
education.
Across the board.
We have to first, honestly, in those music education courses, give students a real depiction of what they're about to walk into. First of all, like I said before, the student teaching process is flawed because you're merely watching a person that has already established rules, regulations, and or standards. That's number one. Like I said, unfortunately, it's not fair, but it's a part of our reality where you may walk into a school that says, hey, I need you to build this program from scratch. I know your emphasis may be percussion or your emphasis may be woodwind, but all I have is brass instruments. How can you make that work? Or you may walk into a situation with an administrator and they literally tell you, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna invest into the program until I see you build. That is a reality. Or a finance director that tells you, hey, this first year I'm gonna let you make it, but the next year, if you want to stay in this district, you must do UIL. So you have to give them a real sense of what they potentially could walk in. Number two, we have to also emphasize they must be a student of the craft at all times. I know myself, many times I see these directors and they feel like what they know and all what they know is good enough
Mm-hmm.
when that's not reality. You should be able to look at your toolbox and say, okay, this part of me is my strength, but this part is weak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I need to work and focus on this. So that professional development piece of always learning, they must have that. And third, the cultural relevance piece, but you have to know your product. You have to know your consumers. And whatever background, I think if we do those 3 things, I think we'll be okay. And then go back and invest and tell the real stories to your department or school of music that you come from. Hey, this is what about to happen. You need to start. Yeah, I know you're a sophomore, but you need to start focusing on this. And you need to start focusing on this because I know this is kind of off topic, but one thing that I see that's popular, you have a lot of people that's arranging, and they're brilliant at arranging. But my question is, do you know how to teach that though? Like, could you really teach that arrangement that you just wrote for that competition? Can you really teach that to a kid that's only been on the trumpet for 3 months? But if you don't teach it to them, say, man, I'm gonna go play football because all I'm doing here is sitting here playing whole notes. And the way my life's set up, bro, like I gotta be moving and shaking.
Don't give me another topic for Wednesday, bro. I'm just because, bro,
but
I've been thinking about that for a while, man. I've been thinking about that for a while.
I'm saying, so I mean, that's the real. I mean, think about it. Like, just this particular topic about arranging, I'm talking about a full score. You have 3-4 trumpet parts. You know, you doubling this, you doubling that, but you might have a 20-piece band. So how can that arrangement translate to the band that you have? And how can you build their self-esteem to be like, I learned this song. What else? What else can I do? Man, all of that is a part of it, man. All of that is a part of it.
I will say this, and I think those are three dynamic things. I think you hit them all on the head. I will say this too, and this ain't no shade to nobody, but like I said, I this is where I say what I need to say. We actually got to come back, and we got to be welcoming for our people to come back. Case in point, we get a degree from historically Black college and university. There's not a lot of master's programs at HBCUs. Let me first put that out there. There ain't a whole handful. There ain't a whole bunch of master's music education programs at a lot of HBCUs, right? So we have to, in most cases, go to predominantly white institutions to be able to receive our music education degree. But then there are so many of us who not only do that, they don't come back. They'll stay in that lane. They'll go to the predominantly white institution for their master's degree. They'll go to the predominantly white institution for their doctoral degree, which is, I understand, because there ain't a lot of them in HBCU. But then they'll stay in that lane. And then in a lot of cases, we don't welcome them back either.
Now, can you give me an example of that?
Not the universities. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, so let's use me for an example. I go, let's say I'll use Norfolk State because I did go to Norfolk State. So I went to Norfolk State. I have a master's degree from Texas Tech University, right? And then I turn around and get a doctorate degree from Texas Tech University. And let's just say I go start teaching somewhere in I don't know,
Wyoming.
There we go. Some predominantly white institution in Wyoming, right? And I do a good job there, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm like, yo, I want to come back. So I try to apply for a job at, I don't know, Alabama A&M, right? The first thing that your social media warriors are going to do is, oh, man, he going to try to make them into a da-da-da-da-da. He ain't going to have them cranking. Like, why do we do this to each other, right? Especially if I'm trying to come back. And then on top of that, there are a lot of cases where our hiring process won't even allow us to come. Well, not gonna say allow, but don't want us back because they don't think that we're capable of doing the thing that they want us to do. Going back to education versus entertainment. They don't think that we can entertain the crowd because, well, you done spent these years in Wyoming, so bruh, I don't know. We want you. Why do we do that? We got to stop doing that. One, we got to actually want to come back, but we also got to make our people feel welcome back. And we have to. Oh, I'm gonna let you go. Let me finish. And we got to upgrade our programs. There's no reason why HBCU programs should not have master's degrees at every single university. And I understand that there are some situations that go on at university, but we got to give back to our university. We got to invest. But we also have to make sure that our programs have master's degrees, incredible master's degree programs, not just to say that we have one just so people can get the degree, but credible programs. We've got to, I just feel like all of those things matter when it comes to the infrastructure part, right? Because as it relates to infrastructure, when we graduate, we'll probably be more prepared. Even if we go to the predominantly white institution and we get whatever it is that we need from those institutions and we try to come back, we're coming back with a different wealth of knowledge, but sometimes we don't welcome our people back in. I'm not saying that's all the time, but I am saying that I've watched that happen to where I know some folks who have graduated and I'll ask them, hey man, you going back to HBCU? Hell no. Because one, all we do is think about marching band. And two, because when they know that they're trying to come back, some of our people don't want us back once again because they don't believe that we are going to take our programs in the quote unquote entertainment direction. So go ahead, bro. Well, my bad. I just wanted to get it out.
No, you good, you good. So I just want to write down. I typed some of these thoughts. So one of the questions that I would ask that person is, why do you even want the master's degree? Because we're gonna be honest, if you surveyed a lot of people in regards of getting a master's degree in music and our culture, they're gonna say because I want to be a collegiate band director, right? Because it's the optics of at least I'll get a group of kids that want to be in band because that's our fight. See, middle school, high school is an option. In college, if I'm giving you this money, it becomes a job. So if you miss that, that's a whole aspect of double deductions and different things like that.
Gotcha.
Double deductions, quadruple deductions, right? So that's that whole aspect. So that's why we're fighting to get to those collegiate levels. Number two, we also have to be honest with ourselves. Some of these directors, it's time for them to retire for the next wave of generation because they're making these seats and these tenured and terminal seats as if it's vital. Like there's no reason why, bro. Like, look, your heyday is prime. Don't die in that seat. Give it to somebody else. But we're also fighting ourselves because we're only hiring the same people that march for us because we quote unquote want to keep the same tradition. Now that's a whole different topic and conversation.
Whole different.
Yeah, because in my opinion, and I'm gonna say this, due to slavery and as African Americans, so many things were taken away from us. We like, bro, we gotta hold on to something. Like we gotta remember something over this, span of time. But then you ask yourself this: are you striving to attain this degree simply to be a college band director, or are you trying to be an educator? Like me, within the last 2 weeks, I was thinking for my DMA, maybe I should real talk minor in music theory. That's something that, like, because you still need those professors on your campus to make you better. My goal is to make music teachers better so that you can compete with these people. Now, do I want to be a college band director? Absolutely. Do I want to have my reign, on the helm and different things? Absolutely. But the bottom line is my next generation, the kids that I teach who are music educated should be 10 times better than me and well prepared than me. But that's what we're fighting with. So when you speak about, going back and help and different things like that, has to be the mindset of we have to take the ego away from the master's degree part because that's what's fighting it. It's the ego that I got a master's. I'm trying to get back to this college level simply to be a band director. 9 out of 10, you may sit in the seat by 15 years and that's it. So after that, then what? So that's what we're fighting, bro.
I don't disagree with that, but I also look at things slightly differently. The only reason why I do is because I realize people have certain lanes too. You got to know where your lane is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for instance, I've done the middle school thing, I've done the high school thing, I've done the college thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed when I started in middle school, I enjoyed teaching beginners. I think that was a great thing because I enjoyed watching them progress through the years. Now, one of the things that would frustrate me is I would get these great beginners and they go to the high school and then they be frustrated with the high school, so they quit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at a lot of my old middle school students who I taught who went to high school and didn't, either for some reason didn't keep going with their instrument, or B, made it, their 4 years of high school, but then, go to college. But I enjoyed teaching, middle school. But then when I got to the high school level, I enjoyed teaching that too. I found a lot of love and stuff like that inside of the high school thing. to the point to where when I started teaching high school, it became more frustrating personally. Now, this is a personal thing for me at the middle school, going back or transitioning back into the middle school thing, because I had gotten a taste of that. And when you get that taste, it's like, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I know how to do it, but that don't necessarily mean I want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then being on the college level completely changed my mind, right? So I'm saying all that to say there are some people who know their lane. There are some people who love teaching middle school, who
Mm-hmm.
love teaching beginners, and then there are some people who feel more comfortable at the high school level. And then there are some people who feel more comfortable at the university level. And I'm saying all that to go back to your point. Why do we get these degrees? I agree that there are some people who get the degree based on the fact that this is, you know, I want the title of saying I'm at a university or blah 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 blah. All right, but anybody who and I can only speak for me personally at this point. Anybody who knows me knows that I care about the student.
Mm-hmm.
I generally care about the students' growth. Ask any of my students, I do my best to try to keep up with them to see where their life has gone and how they progressed, if they're still playing, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm super excited last night because one of my students from Madison High School literally played against Texas Southern last night in Prairie View's band. I had another student who and she was texting me the whole time before she got off the bus at the Battle of the Bands, who's playing at Langston right now. And I, those things matter to me. And even now they'll call me for, or they'll hit me up for advice. Mr. Luke, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. Those things matter to me. So when it comes to the university level, I know that that's mentally or the reason why I got my master's degree is because I want the conversations that we're having now are the
Mm-hmm.
conversations that I want to have with, you know, college music or college students at that level, and saying, yo, this is what's really out there. So let's think about, or let's look at how we're going to prepare you for that. So I agree with what you're saying. I think that you do have to ask yourself why you want that master's degree. Um, but at the same time, like I said, I just think that we have to do better as a culture, as a HBCU, as HBCUs. I think we have to do a lot better in what we're doing, and we have to continue. And once again, these are all my thoughts, all my opinions. I think that we have to do better when not only just educating, but we can't just keep saying, like, hey, this is the culture, so this is what it is. I think we have to be open enough to step outside of the box and say, all right, this is what we've been doing. It has kind of coasted for a while, because that's really where we're at. We're at this coasting level. What are we going to do to shift change? What are we going to do to make sure that we get our people inside of certain spaces to be able to give back to our communities, to change the infrastructure? And I
Yeah.
think that's where my mindset goes sometimes.
So for example, I think going kind of like to that conversation of education versus entertainment, I believe it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I can't really recall, but I believe it was 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. Dr. Lamont Lawhorn, which he's the assistant director of bands at North Carolina A&T. He's
Sounds
also also a member uh, of PASIC. I believe he's on the board of directors with them.
mhm,
So graduated from Prairie View. He's from Fort Worth, Texas, funky town. Graduated from Prairie View, went to Ole Miss.
mhm.
I believe he received his doctorate from North Carolina, Greensboro as well. Was at South Carolina. Who's the marching machine? That's the ones at the marching machine.
Yeah,
No,
and
North Carolina. No, North Carolina. He was there first, and then he transitioned to NCAT. His track record and his credibility has afforded him to sit in places to influence, because Cole still did a whole, like, I don't know, was kind of like a TED talk explaining HBCU, drum style and culture,
mhm,
that it was packed from the first row to standing room only about why we do what we
what
do.
we do. Yep.
And honestly, that what we're doing is really no different than what you're doing. I believe they did an opening for a drum corps
Yeah. they did some opening at DCI. I can't remember which one it was though.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. That's influencing in a positive manner because basically you're educating people who are, and I'm gonna use this term loosely, but it's the reality. You're entertaining, I'm not entertaining, but educating people who are just lack of better words, ignorant to the culture.
I agree.
So I'm showing you. Say, fam, it ain't too different. A flam five is a flam five. A C on a trumpet is a C on a trumpet. But this is how we play. And that's the only difference. So if we get more Dr. Lamar Lawhorns, more Julian Lukes in the world, Ricardo Browns and different things like that in these spaces, like to say, like, look at Rick being that guy for the Blue Coats. That's influence, and having that young man from Prairie View, shout out to him, that was featured. That's how you influence the culture of music education.
Absolutely.
But if we don't continue doing that, the problem is it's only a few of us,
That's the problem.
and that's the problem.
Well, I and let me say this. I'm not gonna say that it's only a few of us. I'm gonna say that we're not speaking up. The ones who I feel like can create change and invade these spaces and all of that. I just don't feel like we're talking. We're sitting in the background, and we're, for the most part, I'm not saying, people like myself or people like you or people like Rick. There are a lot of us out there. Don't get me wrong, but I think that there are more of us out there that are not saying and speaking up and doing what, coming to the forefront. Like I said earlier, I think the people who have, I think the unnecessary voices out there are the ones who are speaking the loudest. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let me give you an example. And I know Rick said it once before on the show, and I'll bring it up. When we were at Prairie View, we had a lot of alumni who came and were talking negatively.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be real. There were some people who were some alumni who were outwardly negatively speaking about the program. But there were a lot of alumni, more alumni than the people who were speaking negatively, who would come to us behind the closed doors when it wasn't on social media, when it wasn't on a YouTube video, and would say, "Man, I appreciate what y'all are doing. Y'all sound great."
Mm-hmm.
And we would take that in and we'd be like, "Yo, that's dope. I appreciate, the love that you're getting." But then we sit back and be like, why you got to tell us behind closed doors? Why can't you shut down the people who the alumni people who are on these social media pages who are saying all this stuff? Why can't you say, "Yo, man, they chill, they sound good"? And I think that that's what's happening right now. I think that there are a lot of voices, people like us, who have these voices, but they're just like, "I'm gonna just do me. I'm gonna stay in my lane. I'm gonna do me," and let all these people on Facebook who have these platforms
Mm-hmm.
keep making things, pushing culture in a way that, like I said, is coasting. So
But I also think it can be very arduous and tiresome of arguing with people who just flat out just don't know what the hell they talking about.
it
Like
can't.
I
But
like
what
after, mhm.
it can be.
After,
What I'm saying is, oh, I thought you were gonna let me. But go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
uh,
sorry.
no, I'm just saying after a while you'd be like, say, fam, you don't know. So I'm gonna let you keep, because let's be real. The comments on from YouTube University, you be like, dog, y'all ignorant is whatever. You be like, I'm not about to keep going back and forth with you, bro.
That's what
Like,
the loudest voices are, bro. That's what the loudest voices are.
but if that's the case, bro, we're gonna be arguing, going, because let me say this. Here's the problem for me. If it's Carolina Crown or if it's Blue Devils, when they have a disagreement, it's one thing to be critical and it's another thing to critique. They're willing to critique each other. Well, this was wrong, and they state facts. Even if he's a lower level, open class guy, he can articulate, well, this is why I didn't prefer this. Us, we dogging you out. We doing this, and then when you make an educated comment, oh, you too much on this, and oh, we just doing it for entertainment, and oh, this is just for the culture. So it's kind of like, so what do you want? Do you want to truly be on that aspect of of telling it like it is and from a non-biased aspect? Are you only rooting for those people because they're loud and that's the school you went to? So after a while, it's like, bro, I'm not about to keep arguing with these people.
Well, I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna close out.
Right.
Listen, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say this. The problem is we've let the YouTube universities
Mm-hmm.
get too much power. And like I said before, we're not speaking as a conglomerate. We're speaking as individuals. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it can be tiring going back and forth with, some random dudes who have no clue as to what they're talking about, right? Because like you said, if you use those DCI analogies and examples, in most cases they're all dudes who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And people who just like drum corps, who never marched before or whatever, they don't have a they don't they may have a space to say something, but they're not controlling the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We've allowed these people to control the conversation. And when we start saying this is unacceptable, and we start and I'm gonna put it out there for anybody watching, anybody who will ever watch this platform, this is what these conversations are for.
Right.
So that we can get in and show that it's more of us who have these thoughts and who have these feelings, and we need to make sure that our voices are heard. You need to be able to say what you need to say and get it off your chest, because when it the reality is the more people who are not in control, the more people who are in control that have no clue, those voices are the ones who are deciding the infrastructure. So
Yeah.
with that being said, we're gonna shut this out. Man, I appreciate everybody who stuck with us. Those folks who showed up in the chat, um, those folks who had comments, man, it was a great conversation. We're gonna have more conversations like this, man, because I think they need to be had. I'm probably gonna make this an every Sunday thing. I don't know. I think that we need to have a lot of these conversations outside of Talk That Talk, especially because a lot of people get to hear my voice a lot more. Generally during Talk That Talk, I'm like doing 15 different things while giving out thought processes or whatever. But um, I think I need to go ahead and make this an every Sunday thing. So every Sunday, just look to have one-on-one time with Jay South, and I'll probably bring in some guests and things of that nature. Before we go, just want to make sure I state it again about NAfME Texas and what we have going on. So, like I said before, I'm going to read it straight from the information that we have. We got a fall webinar coming Tuesday, September 14th from 6 to 9 p.m. That fall webinar is completely free. You can come in and log in, and we'll be hosting a fall webinar on culturally responsive pedagogy featuring Dr. Constance McKoy, professor of music education at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She is a nationally renowned expert on this topic, and we are so excited to have her speak for our organization. You don't have to be a member to attend this free event. All right. So come and get some knowledge. Come and get some of these jewels dropped on you. And I think it's, once again, it's free. It's free. It's free. Once again, that's Tuesday, September 14th from 6 to 9. I'm gonna leave all the information on that in the description on this video. Quan, any more thoughts before we get out of here?
Nah, bro. Thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out to me so I can use this platform as an outlet as well. Uh, I must say that it is a lot of great band directors out there trying to fight the good fight, man. And honestly, have aspirations of transitioning to those collegiate levels, but we just got to work together. And my thing is now continue learning the craft of music so that once you get to that position, that you're ready. Because if you think it's hard at the high school level, it's possibly 50 times harder at the collegiate level, and you would know it, as yourself being a professor as well. Again, thank you, bro, and let's keep this conversations going.
Definitely. And before I get out of here, I want to just kind of piggyback off that. These conversations are for the directors and the music educators like that, the ones who are really fighting the good fight and who are out there and who are competent, who are strong enough to keep fighting this fight. So this is for y'all, man. These conversations are for y'all. All right. This was great. I will see you guys on Wednesday.
All right, man. You have a good one.
Yeah, bro.